by to initiate release sequencer. On my mark. 5.
We're on express elevator to hell. Going down.
2. 1. Mark.
Hello everyone, my name is Mark, aka Derringer. Today is Sunday, December 29th, and you are listening to episode 241 of the Instant Action Podcast, your weekly source for Planetside news and information. As always, I'm brought to you by great listeners like you via the Support the Show tab on instantactionpodcast.com. So I hope everybody out there had a great holiday. I mean, Christmas is over and Hanukkah ends tomorrow night, I guess, on the 30th, when most of you guys are listening to this show. So again, I hope everybody had a good holiday. I had a good one. I've been off on vacation all this week, so that's really the present that certainly gives itself, because, you know, hey, that's that. So I've been doing a lot of PC gaming, playing a bunch of board games, doing all kinds of great stuff while I've been on vacation. But enough about me and how great my Christmas was. What's in store for this week's show? Well, it's my annual year-end wrap-up of everything that was anything for Planetside this year. So strap in as we take a trip down memory lane and hot drop into another episode of the Instant Action Podcast. So this year, 2019, which is pretty much in the rearview mirror right now. I know we got a couple of days left. Wednesday is actually New Year's Day, and it's 2020. I mean, when I was a kid, you know, looking forward, did I ever think I'd get to 2020? I don't know. I mean, it seemed so far in the future back then. But again, here we are, 2020. 2000 was a huge one, but 2020 also is a pretty big one. But anyways, we started this year on the Instant Action Podcast with episode 190. So as you see, I'm recording episode 241 now. That's only 51 episodes, so I certainly missed one this year. But hey, I guess 51 is better than only doing one or two for an entire year. I think when I was in California, I skipped a week because I was traveling to California, but I can't remember exactly if that's when I missed it. But again, either way, doing a full year's worth of podcasting, I'm pretty happy for getting that finished. So let's start by talking about January of 2019 and what exactly happened. And like I said, I started with episode 190 this year, which meant that I was going to do my 200th episode at some point during 2019. But I do remember 2019 beginning with the giant seal clubbing controversy, and I think that's when the term seal clubbing kind of reached its crescendo within the Planetside community. I remember Sirius doing a video on it. I remember Lex doing a response video regarding seal clubbing, and there's been talk of seal clubbing ever since. Also, we had just recently heard about Planetside Arena in December of 2018. So in January of 2019, the Planetside Arena devs were showing off the vehicles and weapons that would be coming to the game in a video. Also in January, a lot of the Connery to Soltech server transfers within Planetside 2 were ending by the end of January. So a lot of players were making up their minds whether they were going to ultimately move to the Soltech server. I do also remember that the Araximus holiday got extended into January of 2019, and everybody's previous progress had been lost due to a server issue. And as a result of that, I do also remember Nick saying that he and the team would be focusing on client and server performance throughout the beginning of 2019 as a result. Also in January, we got the Double XP and the Nanite Appreciation Week. And I'm wondering now, that's right around the corner for 2020. Are we going to be seeing that exact same thing in 2020? Because if you remember last year or in 2019, all the Araximus 2018 items came back to the depot during Nanite Appreciation Week. So I'm wondering, hopefully we'll hear something from the devs if that's going to happen again this year. The devs also did a community stream in January, and I thought this was going to be one of many where they logged in and played with the community. It wasn't your normal dev live stream where they talked about things that were coming to the game. This was just, if I remember correctly, it was Drew, it was Paul, and Roxley all playing in-game and answering questions and generally just interacting with the community. And I really had hoped that we would see more of these happen throughout the year, but unfortunately that didn't happen. And finally, in January, back to Planetside Arena news, we got the dev letter that detailed the launch of Planetside Arena. It detailed the closed beta of Planetside Arena and also announced a Founders season would be coming for Planetside Arena. And as we all know, that didn't really take as we moved on to February. Speaking of February was the first time all the NC Max nerfs started making their way to the public test server, and I think that was a long time coming for a lot of people that they were looking for those. Also, the Planetside Arena closed beta began in February, but shortly after that happened, we all know Apex Legends launched. It actually launched on February 4th, and I think that may have been the first nail in the coffin for Planetside Arena when Apex Legends came out, because it was in such a polished state when it launched, and Planetside Arena was nowhere close to a polished state at that time. People were barely even in the closed beta, and no one was allowed to talk about it or do anything from it. And then, here from EA comes a hugely polished Battle Royale, which is still a huge game now, even at the end of the year. And I really think that was one of the many things that led to Planetside Arena's ultimate closure at the end of the year. Also in February, we got the Valentine's Day Double XP and all the Valentine's items returned to the depot. And we got our first update about the status of the DirectX 11 port in February of 2019. Then moving on to March, Nick announced that Player Studio registrations were closing on March 25th. And as of this recording, they're still not open. I mean, anybody who is currently registered can submit decals, but they're kind of in a limbo. But they're still not taking any new registrations for Player Studio as far as I'm aware. Also in March, Iridar announced that he was stopping his Planetside 2 related content on his website. But in better news, in March, I did the 200th episode of the Instant Action podcast. 200 episodes is a huge milestone as far as I was concerned. I mean, 50, 100, 150, 200, those are all big milestones. This year, I will be doing my 250th episode. It's only 9 episodes away, so that's going to be sometime either February or March of 2020. I'll do my 250th episode of the podcast, which is another huge accomplishment as far as I'm concerned. I hate to toot my own horn on the show, but that's what I'm doing. Also in March of 2019, the St. Patrick's Day events returned, and we also got new jackpot versions of the Cerberus, the Desperado, and the Emperor pistols. I remember I bought that whole bundle and was reminded of them when I created a new TR character on Connery, last week or so when we did the B-Way invasion. And I was like, oh, hey, I've got the Jackpot Emperor on all these characters. So I was happily equipping that on all my various characters. Also, March of 2019, EverQuest turned 20. And Drew's EverQuest Directive event line was all brought into Planetside 2. I know a lot of people enjoyed getting the Fate Stealer and stuff like that and hunting shinies throughout Planetside 2. I think that was a pretty fun event that they brought into Planetside 2, kind of tying the two games together. Also in March, the Horizon Charger and Kindred Carbines all came to live. Also, the NC Max nerfs, their first iteration of them, all came to live. The Worm also came to live, and they also pushed out shorter tank engagements to the live servers as well, where it took a lot less hits to bring vehicles to burning and then destroyed state. And this is a bit of a rollback from the Combined Arms Initiative updates that went live a long time ago. When we moved into April, I did my annual April Fool's show, and this year I did Alexa skills, if you guys remember that. I also did that Planetside 2 was coming to virtual reality, and also that Planetside Arena was coming to the Switch. Obviously, all of those things never did happen within the game itself. But the bigger news about April is some of the first DirectX 11 updates started making their way to the public test server, which really showed that this was something that was definitely coming down the line really soon. Also, in April of 2019, my friend Aflick got his 200,000th anchor kill. Also, as a result of that, he was given a special golden anchor by Rel as a result of that. They also had a dev live stream on April 11th where they talked a bit about DirectX 11, about new player tutorials, about the mentorship system, and spawn system changes that would be coming to live. Also in April, Briggs to Connery server transfers opened for the first time, and this was the beginning of the end for the Briggs server, as we'll talk about later in our yearly update. Then on April 24th, the game update, which brought us DirectX 11 to live, NS Operatives came to live, the Refine and Refuel event came to live, and the spawn system revamp came to live. This was probably one of the biggest game updates in Planetside 2 history, happened in April of 2019. Again, if it had just brought us DirectX 11 alone, it would have been a huge update. But to get the NS Operatives on top of that, plus an entire spawn system revamp on top of that, this was by far, like I said, the biggest game update that we got this past year. They also brought back brought into the game some re-enlistment bundles, and these all just came back recently in the 31 Days of Araximus 2019. But they were ways to get some cool items in game for people that were coming back to the game. There were boosts and all kinds of other stuff in there. They also gave away a free Platinum Tengu with the code NSOPS2019. As far as I know, that code's still active, and you can probably still get that Platinum Tengu if you wanted to. And finally, in April, we found out that the recursion stat tracker overlay was ultimately broken by the DX11 update. And back in April, there was no talk about that ever being fixed. But we'll find out what happened with that. Because then we moved on to May. And at the beginning of May, we got a big PS Forever update, which brought character creation and a whole ton of other stuff to Planetside Forever. It was also coinciding with the 16th anniversary of Planetside, where there was a big PS Forever play session where a lot of people got in and played the game. Also in May, they removed Bounties from Planetside 2, and this was kind of a stealth removal. Nobody really saw this one coming, but Bounties did get removed from the game, so you couldn't be placing them anymore. And the main reason for that, obviously, was because people would place a whole bunch of bounties on someone and then log out of the game, and then when a quad XP event happened, they would log that character back into the game, and because the bounties were being rewarded during the quad XP event, they were getting more experience and more certs than they were actually putting into the original bounties that they were placing on people, and it was just a way to hack the bounty system in the game itself. Also in May, there was some sad news when Roxley announced that she was leaving Daybreak Games. We ultimately found out that she went to Behemoth, and it sounds like she's doing very well over there. I see lots of her tweets on Twitter about how she's doing at Behemoth right now. Also in May was that aforementioned 16th Planetside franchise anniversary. They brought back the bending bundle and bending items to the game during that time. Also in May, Miller and Cobalt received a hardware upgrade. They also had an April 23rd dev live stream where they announced Roxy's replacement. This was Justin. They also showed off a new thumper that was coming to the game. And at the end of May, probably the biggest news for me in Planetside 2, I actually had a chance to visit the Daybreak Games Studios and meet everybody who is involved with Planetside 2 at that time. It was something that I had wanted to do for the longest time, just actually meet the people who produce my favorite games, or my favorite game, and it was really a geek moment. What more can I say? But I really enjoyed it, and I'm really appreciative that Nick was able to get me in the door and give me a tour of the studio, meet everybody, go out to lunch with the guys. It was my favorite thing in 2019 that was Planetside related. Also in May, Biolab teleporter generators were added to live, which is something that's, been there for a while at this point now, and everybody takes them for granted. And final big news in May, I celebrated the 4th anniversary of the Instant Action podcast. Doing 4 years of a podcast is huge for me, and now looking at 5th year is what we're going to be rolling into at this point. When we moved into June, we got a bug fix on Infiltrator Cloaks finally. There was that bug where when you were playing on low settings that you could see people in their Infiltrator Cloaks. They weren't fully cloaked, so it was good to finally get that fixed within the game itself. With some sad news, they ultimately scrapped the Wasp in June. That was the one that people were going to be receiving as a reward from the Refine and Refuel event. Too bad that they scrapped that. In June, they also did bring the maximum pressure alerts to live for the first time. They also brought back the summer directive, which everybody loved doing with the soldier soaker and the water balloons and all the other stuff. They also brought the Thumper to live in June. I know I had a lot of fun playing with the Thumper and still do. And a small change, but all vehicles were ultimately given horns by default in June. So beep to your heart's content after that update. Then moving into July, past the half-year mark, the 4th of July event returned. Everybody got Freedom Thrusters, and for the first time, everybody got Quad XP for everyone. And that was kind of a huge deal because this was, like I said, really the first time that every player, both members and non-members, got access to Quad XP. It ties in perfectly with the 4th of July, so that's a no-brainer as far as I'm concerned. Also in July, we got the news that the DDoS attacker that attacked SOE went back in the day finally received a sentence and received 2 years in prison. It was finally, justice was ultimately served on someone who was, fucking around with allowing people to play games. There's nothing worse when you're a gamer and somebody does a direct denial of service attack on the game that you're playing. So it's nice to see, nice to finally read a story where somebody actually got in trouble for it. Also in July, Daybreak Games filed 2 new trademarks for Dark Paw Games and Rogue Planet Games. As of right now, we still don't know what they're going to be using with those or if they're going to be using them at all. Also on July 16th, we got a dev live stream. They talked about the PS4 stuff that was coming to the game. PS4 up in July still had not received DirectX 11. They hadn't received the NS Operatives and stuff like that. So there was a lot of talk that would be coming in August. Also, they showed off the new mentor system, and they showed off Sanctuary for the first time. And then later in July, the mentor system came to live, and the new player chat channel also came to live itself. Moving on to August, Recursion was finally updated for DirectX 11. It was really nice to see Exploding Fist say that was coming, and I know a lot of people rely on that recursion overlay and stuff like that in games, so it was good to see that got fixed. And then a whole bunch of stuff came to the PlayStation 4 version of Planetside 2. They got access to DirectX 11, and if you're listening to this show and haven't played on the PS4 in a while, at that point they forced you to re-download the entire game. So if you're thinking of coming back to Planetside 2 on the PlayStation 4, note that that's going to happen to you. PS4 also got Nanite system operatives. They got ants. They got access to all the re-enlistment bundles for a short period of time. The summer event finally came to the PS4. They got the maximum pressure and the refine and refuel alerts. The spawn system revamp came to them. The thumper came to them. The NC Max nerfs finally came to them. So as you can see, everything that happened in the past, basically April, May, June, July, all came to the PlayStation 4 all at once. It was a really big update and brought a lot of parity between the two game systems finally. Also, this was the death knell of Briggs, because Briggs ultimately got merged into Soltech in August. So RIP Briggs. It's sad when a server has to close, but I think it was finally time based on the number of players on Briggs. Also during this time period, they reopened server transfers between Connery and Soltech for a short period of time. And these were transfers both ways. So folks that made it from Briggs to Soltech automatically were given a chance to move to Connery this way if they wanted to. And same with players on Connery. If they wanted to go to Soltech, they were able to do that for a short period of time as well. Also in August, the aerial anomaly alert got changed, or event got changed to its current status in the game, from having to just sit in anomalies to instead collect stuff from the anomalies, a tempest from the anomalies, and fly it over to places to be dropped off. Also, there's a lot of better dog fighting going on based on this. They also brought bounties back to the game in August, but now, as we all know, they're automated bounties in the game itself. They also brought the new death screen camera in August to the game, and I know a lot of people have a love-hate relationship with the death screen, mostly infiltrators. I honestly don't mind it. They also brought some updates to the 3 main battle tanks. The Mag Rider got access to the recharge and also the multi-directional exhaust option. Prowler got the Rampart projector, and the Vanguard got the Nimitz reactor. We also finally in August got the Planetside Arena development letter, which detailed the early access to the game itself, and they also provided a quarterly roadmap to the game. I know, obviously we know it failed, but at this point in time, people were getting excited about what might be coming to Planetside Arena. Then in September, I joined the Planetside Arena beta. It was under an NDA at the time, but I was able to say that I was in it. And I did play a bit of Planetside Arena. They also released their first look at Planetside Arena gameplay via a YouTube video. And right off the bat, the response to it was overwhelmingly negative at that time. And really just seemed to be another indication that Planetside Arena may not be long for this world. Then a whole bunch of new things came to the PlayStation 4 version of Planetside 2. The aerial anomaly change, automated bounties, death camera, and those main battle tank changes all came to the PlayStation 4. We also got every new player in September earning 100 certs per level now. I don't think a lot of new players even realize that. That didn't used to get 100 certs per level. You do get that now, which is pretty awesome. Also in September, shortly after they released the gameplay, they also lifted the non-disclosure agreement for Planetside Arena. And for the first time, people started live streaming their gameplay, releasing videos about gameplay of Planetside Arena, and it just further fueled negativity towards the game itself. Also in September, other sad news, Doku announced that he would no longer be making Planetside content, which, as you know, he created a lot of the really awesome stuff within the game itself. So it was sad to hear that he wasn't going to be doing that anymore. Also in September, because of the lifting of the Planetside Arena NDA, The Planetside Arena bundle came to Planetside 2. I purchased it. I wear some of that stuff proudly. Note that it was not available on PlayStation 4 and never has been and most likely never will be, which is unfortunate. And finally, at the end of September, it was announced that the Planetside 2 archive site was being shut down and he would no longer be taking screenshots in game, super high detailed screenshots in game and sharing them with the community. This was like the third big person in the game. We had Iridar at the beginning of the year, then we had Doku saying it was stopping, and then Planetside 2 archive shutting down. It just really felt like a lot of people were abandoning ship on Planetside 2 at September. And then we rolled into October. And October was probably the worst month in Planetside 2 recent memory for me, at least all of 2019, because that's when the Daybreak Games was unexpectedly hit with a whole bunch of layoffs. We lost Nick, we lost Drew, we lost Paul, we lost Garrett, all directly on the Planetside 2 team. We lost Brian and Alex both on the Planetside Arena teams. This was a really low period as far as I was concerned, and I definitely considered stopping podcasting about Planetside 2 at that time. I considered Nick, Drew, Paul, and even Garrett. I didn't know him as well. But I considered these people friends, even though they were just people who created a game that I loved. And I did a whole show on losing them and what it meant to me, what I think it meant to the community and things like that. I know both Drew and Paul have since landed on their feet. I know Drew actually made it cross-country, and he's now working at ZeniMax. And I know that obviously Elder Scrolls Online. So if you're interested in stuff like that or playing Elder Scrolls Online, note that it's in good hands with Drew at this point. As for Paul, I know on Twitter he's also announced that he's working for ZeniMax as well on an unannounced project. So awesome that both of those guys were able to land on their feet and pick something else up. They're both in Maryland now, so welcome to the East Coast, guys. As for Nick, I'm not sure what he's up to right now. I'm also not sure what Garrett's up to right now. I know Brian said he was working on teaching himself some UE4 stuff, and I think he might be creating a multiplayer FPS prototype. I hope he's creating something cool because he's created other cool things in the gaming universe, and I'd like to see more. As for Alex, he's still playing games and watching anime and stuff like that on Twitter. I'm not sure if he's working on something new or not. But again, ultimately, one of my lowest points in Planetside 2 game sphere was when all these guys got let go. And, glad to see that many of them are back on their feet doing other stuff, and I really hope the best for all of them. But as you can see, I did keep podcasting because I had to talk about more stuff in October because Nanite of the Living Dead returned. Also, the Lacerda Arbalest and Vanquisher assault rifles got released. Frag grenades were given faction-specific explosions. The Dalton one-shot kill was finally reverted, so any Liberator players who still aren't playing because of that was taken out, you can come back now. Also in October, talking more about Brian, he revealed his ideas for a conquest mode in Planetside 2 that never happened, and I really liked that idea. I'd recommend you revisit that episode to find out more about that mode that never happened. And then at the end of October, Sirius released his challenge video. This is the second big controversial video that he released in 2019. Kind of crapped on B-Way during it, but it was all about 5 KD, 2 KPM that he was able to achieve, showing that basically anybody who puts their mind to it can do it. I'm not going to rehash the entire thing because we moved on to November, getting close to the end of the year. Once again in 2019, I did Extra Life, and I once again have to thank my listeners like Baloney Coma, Shactus, Crackle, Lex, Catgirl VS, Drew, Gelos, Fireman, and that one anonymous donor for helping me make my goal. Not only did I make my goal, but you guys kept matching my initial goal, and I had to keep extending it. So this year I raised more than I had ever raised before for Extra Life, and I really have you guys to thank for that. Also in November, Planetside Arena got a little bit of a change because they brought Capture the Flag to Planetside Arena, which I thought was fun. There were certainly some bugs built into it that they could have ironed out, but I did think Capture the Flag was pretty fun. We also had the 7th anniversary of Planetside 2. We all expected to get a live stream from the devs regarding it. Unfortunately, that got canceled and moved to December because some stuff they wanted to show off wasn't ready yet. I still think that this was a horrible move on their part. They should have just done a stream to hype the anniversary of the game, regardless of what was available, and they could have just answered questions from the community or done anything. They really should have had that stream, and I think that was a misstep on their part, which hopefully they'll bounce back from in 2020. And then finally, at the end of November, all the Araximus Depot items, that full list got released, and it started the buzz about the 31 days of Araxis, which brings us to December, our current month, and the end of 2019, where Planetside 2 got named to one of the top 50 games of the decade by Rock, Paper, Shotgun, and that's really no small feat for a game to do that. We also got some news out of former employees at Daybreak Games that they were working on a Marvel game that never was. Everybody thinks that they could have been printing money if they had released this when the Avengers stuff was all wrapping up, but obviously that never happened. And then the real big news in December, the cancellation of Planetside Arena. And with that cancellation, a lot of rejiggering of jobs at Daybreak Games and a lot of more focus back into Planetside 2. And we did get a dev live stream finally on December 11th with Andy, Rel, and Cardo. They showed off the Winter Biolabs, the NSO sniper rifle, the Javelin, which is basically the Tempest from Planetside Arena brought into Planetside 2. Also, the Defector NSO Max finally came, and all these things were brought to live itself. They also showed off a bit more Sanctuary and what might happen with Sanctuary. We had the return of the Winter event in Planetside 2. They also offered a big one, ASP respecs for the first time this December, and I just talked about that on last week's show. It's still huge news. And then finally, we got an Onward to 2020 letter from Rel, and in that letter, he talked about what they might be doing. There's going to be a big game update in January, basically, and he talked about their main focus right now is giving outfits a reason for existence in Planetside 2. So that's kind of what we're thinking about moving into the new year. So let me take a few minutes and talk about what I think might be coming, or what I hope might be coming to Planetside 2 in 2020. First, let's talk about obviously there's going to be a big game update in the beginning of the first quarter. Whether that happens in January, whether that happens in February, we don't know. It feels like they just dropped a whole bunch of big stuff on us in December. So I wouldn't be surprised more if that might be something that happens in February rather than January. Again, just kind of grasping at straws here. I don't know for sure. I do know, though, that based on Rel's Onward to 2020 message, that I don't expect us to get a purging of old outfits or anything like that. He specifically said he wants to give a reason for lapsed outfit leaders to come back to the game, and one of the worst ways to welcome outfit leaders back to the game would be to purge their inactive outfits or remove their outfit tags. So people who are asking for that, I would highly doubt that to happen. Other than that, I expect Sanctuary to be a big major addition in 2020. Do I know what's going to come from Sanctuary? No, I don't. I think there'd definitely be vendors and stuff like that. But we're kind of in the dark on what might come to Sanctuary. It'd be interesting if maybe they kind of molded some of the Planetside Arena game modes into the Sanctuary itself and let people play their existing characters in those various game modes in addition to playing Planetside 2. Is that something that I would like to see? Yeah, I mean, that could be something different and bring different types of players to Planetside 2 and the franchise as a whole. And I'd hate to see some of those assets of Planetside Arena just kind of disappear and never get used. Also in 2020, I expect some sort of big update. Osher, we haven't heard much about Osher, so I hope they're going to restart working on Osher and maybe second half of 2020 or second quarter of 2020, there might be more talk of Osher and what's going on with that. I mean, they did show off, some decent stuff regarding it. And I mean, honestly, they could probably take a lot of the stuff that they did in Planetside Arena, transfer that over into Osher at this point and reuse some of those assets. Also, 2020, I certainly hope that there's going to be, well, hope's not the right word. I think that in 2020, I would not be surprised. I don't hope, but I wouldn't be surprised if there's a lot more talk about merging servers. I think we're getting to a lifetime of Planetside 2 where dwindling population may dictate that we merge some servers, and I wouldn't be surprised if we see a Connery Emerald merge at some point, and maybe even a Miller Cobalt merge at some point in 2020. And that's something I've said in the past might happen, and obviously it didn't happen in 2019. Do I want servers to merge? No. I would prefer having lots of servers for the game and lots of people playing the game. And who knows, maybe the outfit changes will bring a lot of people back to the game. I don't know. But I wouldn't be surprised if we see merging of servers in 2020. So those are some of the things I expect to see in 2020. On top of that, I'd expect more weapons in the game, hopefully some more faction-specific ones. I'd like to see some new faction-specific vehicles in the game. I still always hold out hope that we're going to see a Thresher for VS, as well as other faction-specific buggies. There's a lot of assets from Planetside 1 that have never made it into Planetside 2, and I'd love to see some of that stuff come. And maybe with the folks working on Planetside Arena having their more dedicated work on Planetside 2, we might see some of that. But anyway, here's to 2019. It was an interesting year for Planetside 2, I have to say. We got a lot of change to the game. We lost some really good people working on the game as far as I'm concerned. And I'm definitely curious to see what comes in 2020. And with that, let's move on to housekeeping this week.
Housekeeping.
What's up?
Housekeeping.
Come back later, please.
Housekeeping.
Not now.
Housekeeping.
Go away.
I coming anyway?
So no emails or anything this week. I know everybody was celebrating the holidays, so I'm not surprised, and that's quite all right. So that is going to be it for this week's show, my 2019 wrap-up. As always, how can you get in touch with me or the show itself? Your first stop should be my website, www.instantactionpodcast.com. You can email me at instantactionshow@gmail.com. You can also follow the show on Twitter at InstActPodcast. But in closing, if you've enjoyed the show, please leave me a review on your podcast listening avenue of choice, whether it's iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play, or anywhere else. Also, feel free to tell your friends and outfit mates about the show. But finally, thanks for listening, and keep spamming that join combat, formerly known as Instant Action button. Derringer out.